Hey there, welcome to my new room where we took out all the bed and now there's just hard floor around so I can roll around as much as I like. Thank God, because I needed the space.
As you can see, it's still missing some character, and hopefully that will slowly evolve to make this more of a true gaming room. But while I was reorganizing the amount of dragon figurines, I found some of their colors odd and, I don't know, they might need some more purple. Yeah, that'll do. Spyro the Dragon is one of Sony's original mascots back in the PlayStation era alongside Crash Bandicoot. The series was originally developed by Insomniac Games as more of a 3D platformer similar to Mario 64, as it was intended to aim for the younger demographic of the era. This would lead a new generation of young kids that will play a game with a purple overgrown salamander as fans of the PlayStation with a simple level of platforming that anybody could join. I was not one of them. Yeah, so when the first game dubbed Spyro the Dragon released in 1998, there were two problems with that release. One, I was still a sperm at the time, and B, I was given the rival of Spyro when I was conceived. So it took me all the way to 2002 for me to not only finally give a chance to play Spyro for the first time, I also lost my original Nintendo 64 to a PS2. Because of this exchange made by my parents, I lost Mario 64, but I found a new love for dragons for this old series. Not like that. Once I got a hold of this series, I was glued to the gameplay from flying and or gliding around the map to just endanger the wildlife of the area. The only issue was that young me only had Ripto's Rage and Year of the Dragon and unintentionally chose to start playing the third game of the series without even knowing. Yeah, I didn't know there were 3 games in the series, but I didn't care about the story, I just wanted to be a dragon and burn shit. Heck, I thought the first Legend of Spyro was the 4th game of the series without knowing all of this mess. Either way, the series stuck with me no matter what as a childhood series that I could never forget. And when I finally had money under my name, I would support the first Spyro game that would come out, even if it's a lie.
Yeah, ignoring the obvious proxy and the family tree, that the footage here is from the Reignited Trilogy. That's because back in 2022, I had this personal project to play all 3 of the Spyro games. However, I didn't have a PlayStation 2 despite having all 3 of these games. By the way, these are not my original copies. I had to buy these all over these last year. But I decided to max all 3 games, so with that, I decided to go play Reignited Trilogy. Why did I do this? Well, for one, I really like these 3 games, specifically technically these 2. But hey, I always wanted to try the first one. And the second reason is, well, why not? I just really like playing them, and now I like to share it with y'all. Third reason is because this room took way longer than I thought to actually complete. So here we go. We'll be playing Reignited Trilogy, specifically the Year of the Dragon game, developed by Toys for Bob, and let's see how that goes. The game starts with a scene with Spyro, Hunter, and the rest of the dragons sleeping and having their unborn children taken by a rabbit lady and some minions. And well, do not hire these guys as babysitters. The group wakes up and sends a duo to chase and rescue the eggs, and now we enter the first hub world of the game. The game has 4 hub worlds, or home worlds in this content. Each world has 8 levels in total with at least 4 standard levels, 1 playable character level, a speedway, a boss fight, and a Sparks minigame level. And this does not include the 3 to 4 player character levels in some of the standard levels and minigames. The goal is to complete and unlock the eggs that are scattered around the Forgotten Realms, where the magic has ceased to exist and is ruled by a tyrannical queen named the Sorceress, helped by her apprentice Bianca. To traverse these worlds, you need to at least learn the basics of platforming, jumping and running. To add to those mechanics, you have the ability to glide to far off platforms, a little hover to make an immediate stop to your glide, or just to get enough distance to land on a platform. In terms of platforming, this gave the game a level of depth that allows out-of-the-box thinking of whenever there seems to be a large distance by air or land to explore that most of the time leads to plummeting to your death. To correspond with these abilities, you have the more offensive moves, which are the ram attack where you charge with your horns and hit a bitch. You can also use this action to close distances or on land or get a running head start for a long glide through an obstacle. You can also use the fire breath attack just in case you really don't want to get too close and personal to some of these guys and just prefer to set them ablaze, or attack the wildlife, but we'll get to that part in a bit. What I like about having these attack methods is that the game does a well done job of justifying why these moves exist, as some of the enemies are given perks that make them immune from one method to another. Like how the big enemies need to be attacked by fire breaths, as you'll just get pushed back by a retaliating Nork, or some enemies would just wear steel armor to be immune to fire breath, so you need to ram them with Godspeed in order to retaliate them back. Now, there are some instances where a big enemy might show up with armor on, and you might need some sort of power or explosive or a rock to stab them in order to defeat them, and sometimes it's a little annoying to deal with it, but hey, kinda cool that they do something like this. But in the end, I'm glad there's a bit more challenge in these guys, as the game is rather easy in terms of normal gameplay, as you really are only killing in order to collect gems or to move forward into the level. There are some other mechanics like head bashing or swimming, but those really speak for themselves, so I'll just show it here and move forward.
These skills are what helped make this game stand out back in the early 2000s, as in terms of 3D platformers, not many of them had the aerial movement and heights that most games like Crash and Mario 64 did not explore too much into, as much as Mario 64 does have the flying cap, but the entire game is not centered around gliding and ramming around, and more of a fast-paced run and jump in order to reach set heights. While in Crash's case, though, does have some 3D levels in certain occasions, more relies on the mixture of 2D and 3D platforming, from the boulder level to some of the side-scrolling levels, only focusing on the ability of his spin attack and some jumping platforming. Take this with a grain of salt. I haven't played a Crash game in years, but I am down to prove myself wrong by playing some of these games. While in Spyro, you play as a purple dragon with the ability to fly occasionally. Yeah, despite being a dragon, you can't fly very well without power-ups, so not the best at it. Having the ability to have this amount of vertical and horizontal movement leads to clever ways in hiding some of the eggs and gems that can only be achieved because of these controls. I will say, however, some of these placements were annoying to the point that I embarrassingly spent too many hours on some of these that turned out to be way simpler than I thought. God damn it. To add on, Spyro does have a pseudo health bar system in the form of his best pal, Sparks the Dragonfly. You'll know how low your health is based on what color he is. Yellow for max, blue for 2 hits, green for 1 hit, and absence for the next time you're dead. In order to heal yourself, or in this case Sparks since he's the one that's getting sick till he dies, okay, you must attack the local wildlife in the hopes of a butterfly to pop out to either heal you once or fully heal you. See, there's a perfectly good explanation for attacking the locals. The bug gets it. These are skills and foundations of the game, so in translation, let's see how useful they can be. I've seen worse. Now with all these nice perks to use for the duration of the game, how does the levels work? Well, it's simple. You go in, you kill shit, reach the end, get an egg.
Thank you.
Okay, my bad. There's more to the levels in the game. Just let me explain. In each level, there's a certain amount of eggs and gems to be collected, as Spyro's a collectathon game. For those who don't know, a collectathon game is basically a game where a major focus, or at least a large focus, is collecting some sort of knickknack in order to either proceed through the game as levels, or could be locked behind these collectibles. Or a bigger focus on having some sort of completion value, as the game would have some sort of focus on having a 100% completion by collecting the knickknacks. Or in this case, 117%. Oh boy, I'll get to that mess later on. In Spyro's case, you collect the eggs as well. Obviously, that's the full purpose, as they were kidnapped. Along with gems, which are used to unlock certain areas locked behind a character named Moneybags, who is this greedy bear that will only help you out by paying him your hard work in finding these gems, because I am not going to lie, I would complete some of these levels only to press the start button and see I am missing like 2 gems, and I would just sigh in pain, and as I now have spent the next hour to find said gem. The levels are all made around this idea by hiding the eggs through clever placements or challenges that need to be conquered. Or gems are placed all around the worlds, along with enemies somehow having them inside them and only able to get that by assault. This gives the player some sort of motivation of searching and exploring every little corner just so they can see that sweet 100 in the level screen with the satisfaction of saying, I did it. Now you could just do the basic mission given to you by the first non-hostile character you met and just reach the end by collecting the 1 egg and move on to the next level. But you'll miss out a lot by doing this, and not just by the corresponding level, but by potential other levels, as you'll possibly not have enough eggs or gems to unlock other levels that might require like the new playable characters that are introduced here. Here are 4 new characters, each with their own playstyle that matches with the levels available to them. There's Sheila, who I didn't know was a girl until I played this version of the game. Here she has this super jump that promotes long vertical movement in order to reach heights that Spyro would normally not have access to. Sergeant Bird, with a Y for some reason, who's a penguin that learns to fly through technology and war. Due to his access through infinite flying via jetpack, most of his pros are through his free movements while flying around and shooting flying targets through rockets, and help his horizontal and vertical movements, giving more aerial levels rather than gliding platforming Spyro provides. Bentley is a Yeti who hits really hard. That's about it. Agent 9 is a sci-fi monkey that has this blaster, and instead of platforming, we are given more FPS-like stages to collaborate the shooter vibe that this man gives. On an off note, I like to think that Agent 9 segments were sort of a proto-stages of the Ratchet & Clank series that would come out down the line. I don't know, I just saw the similarities. Anyways, these stages gave the perfect amount of variety to Spyro because, let's face it, half of us wanted something new as this was the 3rd installment of the series, and the other half only had the attention span of a minute.
I'm bored.
and I am one of them. This gave Spyro 5 new ways to play through new characters that each give a unique way of completing their individual levels that not only works perfect for the character at hand, but giving an opportunity to do the game that Spyro couldn't do to his limitations aren't the same as the others before. Every time you enter their individual levels, you know that you're getting an alternate mode that whether or not you like it, you'll have something that the others could not give you a fair good time playing through. Except the shield level where you lead these little guys to this machine, and because they're blind, they are too stupid to not avoid these obvious traps, and this was just lame and annoying. Now, despite these 6 main playstyles, there are the minigames available through the worlds, each giving their similar or different playstyles for the moment at hand. Each minigame is located in the standard levels, at least in pairs of 2. Sometimes, however, one minigame at the second slot might be filled with the character levels mentioned before. The purpose of these parts is just to have a different sort of challenge, but as Spyro instead of the extras. Most of these minigames are just entering a vehicle of some sort and shooting some objects or people, but others could have some niche games like this one where you have to protect this ice skater from these hockey players because I don't know why they want to attack this lady, maybe they just hate women. Later on, you'll get an actual hockey game, and let me tell you, on my first attempt, I didn't really listen to the man telling me where to score, so I accidentally scored against my own goal for whatever reason. These segments were fun distractions to have another way to spice up the game if you feel like the game is too easy or bland sometimes. Because I gotta be honest, sometimes when I play a Spyro game in general, it can feel pretty repetitive at certain points, especially if you just try to do the bare minimum. So having these minigames and characters can feel like a breath of fresh air to have, even if they're only for a moment. As some of these can be either lengthy or somewhat difficult if it just tries to go willy-nilly on these maps.
Unless you like skateboarding.
Okay, yeah, I didn't like the skateboarding levels. Sue me. Whether it be the simple do tricks and hit people or the racing levels. The controls feel wonky to me every time I have to do the tricks in the air, causing me to trip and break the board, even at times when it seems like Spyro looks like he'll nail the landing, only to be a laughing stock. Other times I just find this bland and a nuisance to control, even when I want to restart or just get back to a specific area of the level, and the game won't let you off the damn board. It's either you're off the board or you be stuck on it until you break it again, and sometimes the game will just automatically put you back on the board. As for the races, I found them worse. Sure, doing air tricks is a necessity, but they can give you an extra speed boost in order to get past some of these guys, because I swear these guys are just programmed to always be faster than you. Which is fair, I guess. It helps that you can shoot them and temporarily kill them off the race, but it doesn't matter too much if you make a singular mistake, whether it be a missing speed pad or slightly off an angle, and the game registers it as a crash, causing you to fall back and behind and having to build up your whole momentum again. I'm sure there are those who like these levels. Hell, I've already seen others say that these were probably their favorite levels of the game, but man, I just can't enjoy these even in the original game, and I didn't really like the skateboarding levels because of the controls felt weird to me, and all I wanted to do was to fly around like a dragon. Get to that part in a second. It might be because whenever a game introduces a high-score skating-like level, like in Jak 2, I just couldn't figure out the controls as a kid and just felt the whole thing was a nuisance. Hell, even in Halo, whenever the game wants you to drive a vehicle, I still screw up with the controls and wind up dead in at least the funniest way possible. I don't know, I guess I'm just not a fan of driving, skating, and some of the flying levels as they never feel right, unless the game is made around the mechanic, and even then, the only game I like to play is Mario Kart, so my standards aren't very high in terms of complicated driving controls. If you enjoy these levels, great, because I can at least give them the same praise like the others that they do give a level challenge that is left memorable to those that enjoyed it. I'm just not one of them.
Now with that out of the way, we can finally get to the main story and
the Speedway levels are one of the main staples of the Spyro games, where you usually have an infinite time of flying with the limited time of collecting or attacking pedestrians. These are obviously because Spyro's a dragon and he doesn't have wings, so why not let him fly? These are fine on how they are, it's just simple collecting everything in one swoop. But it's the first attempts where I have my first problems.
The main challenge here is time attack, where you have to go through a course under a certain amount of time, collecting or attacking a certain amount of enemies or items. Each one you attack will give you some portion amount of time, and it's best to try to get these in a specific narrow path that the game kind of alludes you to, but you might have to make it up on the way you go. Sometimes you might miss an enemy or two and you have to go backtrack all the way to where you missed, and that could lead you to a loss due to you losing so much precious time. And yeah, because of this game mode can get pretty repetitive. My strategy for whenever I do these, especially if there's like an obvious road or train track around the area, is to run alongside the opposite direction of where they're going. That way they will be basically running into you. This also works on enemies that are flying around in a circle manner or in a specified path. That way you don't have to go chase them down, and you'll be able to collect the majority of these enemies in one scoop. As usually the ones that follow a specific path, most of the time are the most to collect, giving you enough time to collect the rest, and you'll be finishing the time attack portion of the game. And these are fine. Time attack is not the worst, but it's not the best. The only good thing I like about it is that you are a dragon flying around, and that's pretty fun. After you do the time attack, you can actually do two other options right after it, and it's either you do the racing portions, or you can do the hunter segments, where you play as hunter, and where you usually fly around, and honestly, he just becomes a shoot 'em up at this point. Kind of like an old arcade shooting style. And I'm fine with this because you don't get to play hunter a lot, so I'll take what you can get. These are pretty fun. These are just kind of like their own thing. But if you mess up, you actually do have to start all over again. So that sucks. As for the racing parts, I didn't like the skateboarding racing levels. Why the fuck do I like them here? So the main difference here is that you're flying the whole time and are given more chances to use the speed boost to gain the lead while having more rockets to shoot down your foes. So why am I bitching about this? Well, in order to stay in the race, you have to collect these rings as you go and only when they light up. If you miss one, even if you're in the lead, you have to start all over. Sometimes when you're flying, you get these predicaments where you have to go out of your way to get a speed boost or an item while quickly cycling back to the ring without passing over it. And man, it can get frustrating doing these because you can be in the second or first place and you want to make sure you stay there or go further only to screw up and start all over because of a simple mistake. I say, the moment the race starts, go through as many boosts and gather as many rockets as soon as possible to quickly get to first place. Once there, only go for the easy boosts and save a rocket for when second place guy passes you because they are slightly faster than you by default. I find these only slightly better than the skateboarding levels only because of the aesthetic of flying and more freedom of manipulating the race in your favor. Now, it could be a skill issue by me, but all I care about is to get the damn egg at this point. Well, I've already talked about most of the gameplay. Let me see what else here are aside from the bosses. Oh yeah, Sparks! So, after completing a hub world, you'll unlock a level where you play as Sparks in a 2D dungeon crawler-like mode, and these are definitely my favorite parts of the game. As Sparks, you go around shooting against the hordes of enemies while looking for the single egg of the level while collecting gems along the way. Using power-ups are found to help traverse through, as it's pretty easy to get overwhelmed if you're too slow on killing enemies. It can be tricky as the screen can be overrun with stray shots and hordes of evil bugs, but with the right maneuverability and shots alignment, it can be a blast shooting through your way out of these levels. It's a shame that they're only available when you beat a hub worlds, as it's easy to forget them, and when you move on to another world with the one only thing in mind is to jump the first portal you see. After this, we have the boss fights, and I'll save the sorcerer's fight for later, but for now we'll have the 3 fights: Buzz, Spike, and Scorch. If you think that isn't correct, then you're right. There's actually 6 bosses to talk about. 3 major fights. I'm not gonna lie, when it comes to Spyro games, most of the time the bosses are simple or just lame. Hell, I forgot about the mini bosses until looking through the footage. Specifically 2 of them, because I do remember the twin fire dragons. So to start off, we have the first boss, which is Buzz, and yeah, he's not that difficult as he is the first boss. What you do need to do when you fight him is you gotta push him to the lava so that Sheila could just Goomba stomp him and deal damage. That's pretty much the basis. But after the second time you do it, he will start sprouting fire around him, and you can't get close to him while he does that. So you have to wait for a bit so that we can finally push him. But I encountered a stupid thing to where even though he was on the edge, he wouldn't go back down. Okay, sure. But I believe it takes 4 or 5 times, and then he's done. He's a simple boss, not much to go with, and I mean, at least it's a good beginner boss, I'm not gonna lie. And with the second boss, it will be Spike, and I'm not gonna lie, he's a bit more competent than Buzz was. So the objective changed during the fight on how to deal damage. The first half, you have to wait for Sergeant Bird to drop down some of these fireballs, and then you ram them into him, and that's how you do damage. However, midway through the fight, instead of getting the balls that will be on the floor, they will become more of these power-up balls so that we can power up your attacks, and then you can finally damage them. As for a while, you can't actually hurt him with a ram attack or a fire breath. You have to use a power ball. But be warned, because halfway through the fight, the floor will start sprouting fire around, and that can actually hit you and kill you, as I accidentally ran into one without even paying attention, just because the camera angle wasn't on it, so I just accidentally ran into it. As well as he can both destroy the balls or use him to power up his own blaster, and because he already has range, it's a bit difficult to even get close to him without even hurting yourself. But all in all, it's a fairly competent fight. I think I died twice to this man, but better than Buzz, honestly. And then we have Scorch, who's our third boss before the sorcerers, and
I will not lie, I think he was the easiest boss out of the three. And I think it's because maybe the Reignited Trilogy might be easier. I do not know. But I first tried this man, and the other two at least got to kill me once. This man didn't even get to do anything. He hurt me a bit, but that's about it. The goal is to deal damage through the missiles that Bentley will just randomly give you, as I don't know why that's all he decides to do, while evading his attacks and waiting for him to put down the force field, which I think is the only actual difficult thing. Like, the raining fireballs are only in a specific area and it's easily dodgeable, and the crabs and the eggs you launch are either, well, crabs or dynamites that are easily avoided. Even then, it's just running around and, give me a missile. Okay, damage time. That's about it. This man's like a big pushover. A very exaggerated one at that. As for the mini bosses, well, two of them I completely forgot, so that tells you a lot already. For Bluto, you go in and shoot him with a bow, and for Sleephead, you chuck bombs at his face. No wonder I forgot about these guys. There was nothing memorable about them. They had boring environments of a boss room, and their fights barely lasted a minute. As for the twin fire dragons, well, I do remember how I felt for this guy. Here, you have the flying and fireball power up and having to chase the two dragons down until they die. Seems simple enough. Well, what if I told you that not only can they regenerate after a small duration of time, but they can easily evade you through tight areas, giving them enough time to regenerate a good amount, leaving most of the work that you did put to waste. And the fact that there's two of them only makes it worse. Now, by all means, this fight is not hard at all. Hell, the dragons don't even fight back, they just fly around in someone's scripted path just trying to stay alive. But because of the regeneration of the dragons, you can't switch back and forth from each of them in hopes to save time. It's either shoot one or the other. And you have to shoot the tail ends of the dragons or else the attack won't register. So following them from behind is your only chance to maneuver around the tight spaces precisely to tail them the entire time, so they won't regenerate. This was time consuming, and frankly the only reason I don't remember this fight was because of its length, and honestly, the dragons look kinda cool. But fuck this fight! With pretty well dubbed gameplay and variety, I imagine the story will be in the same caliber. Yeah, just as in-depth as Hitler's painting. The story isn't bad or anything, it just does exactly what it needs to be. A simple, fun adventure of a purple dragon saving his race's future from a queen that wants to rip off their wings. Okay, maybe some steps were skipped along the way. The more accurate version of the story is about Spyro Hunter going to the Forgotten Realms to rescue the Dragon Eggs, where Bianca has scattered them along the realms to hide them, and with the side missions of helping each world their problems that they have due to the Sorcerer's Millings, you are able to collect at least most if not all the eggs from the Sorceress, and restore the Forgotten Realms as a peaceful land. Like I said, it's not that deep, it's just fun all the way through. I would say the only reason the story is fine is because the characters, the animation, the environment helps divide the world believable. What do I mean by that? For instance, the characters do act and behave depending on the situations that they are in, most notably Bianca, as each time the Sorceress makes up a new boss and sees what she says and does to others, Bianca is notably uncomfortable each time this happens. All the way to the point that she just quits right when she finds out the Sorceress just wants the wings of the baby dragons for a spell that she never goes in depth on what it is. Guess we'll never know about that. Because, yeah, who wouldn't want to quit when you slowly realize that your ruler mentor is honestly kind of an ass? Then there's the new playable characters, and I just love their interactions with Moneybags, who, again, is working with the Sorceress, so their acts of assault are justified. Hell, even the side characters have some personality, if not through dialogue, at least through their movements. This is where I appreciate the animation of the Reignited Trilogy, as everything just feels so expressive and colorful, both in the cutscenes and outside of them. The movement helps define some of the characters' dialogue in the cutscenes, even though the random enemies with some of their taunts and goofy actions, as I feel most games would just have them do something like, I don't know, just stand there and stare at your soul. This game to me is honestly one of the more gorgeous looking games out there, just because of how vibrant it is. The lighting and tone of these worlds are vast and give each level its own personality rather than just an ice level or a water level. I would say my favorite of the levels would probably be the Fireworks Factory, mostly due to the overall design and lighting of the place. Makes it feel like a Lunar Year's party despite the ninjas running around. That and Handel and Greta come back from the second game and now they're like secret agents? Yeah, sure, I'm not going to ask any questions about that. Moving on. This game honestly does feel alive, as completely interacting with NPCs does feel like it matters. For example, every time you enter a level, you always find one NPC there to talk to ask for help, and when you get to the end of the level, they say thanks and give you an egg. But when you're ready to move on to the next hub world, the locals of each world come to give you a new ride to go to the next world. That's honestly pretty cool. The developers didn't need to do this at all. They could have just made another portal and just have you go through and boom, boss fight. Well, if you pay attention, sometimes when you finish a level, you can catch a local NPC from a level you just exited, run over to help you make the transportation, and that's pretty cool to have. Not a lot of people could have just done that. They could just instantly respawn over there. Nope, he just runs over. One of my favorite details about this is halfway through the game, Hunter gets kidnapped and he needs to be rescued. But if you go to any of his challenges during this time of him being in prison, you'll have the sign that basically tells you he's unavailable until you free him. I legit didn't know that until I wandered into one of his challenges, and legit thought that was a nice add into detail, because both this game and the original are no strangers to having multiple models of the same character in the map. Just one is usually in the beginning of the map and the other is somewhere at the end. I get it, it's easier to do that, but it can be kind of janky and funny if you can find a way to see them both at the same time on the map, and it kind of ruins the immersion bit. So knowing that and seeing that they kept up with the missing Hunter shtick just gives the game more of a soul than other games that I would just play for mindless time, not out of enjoyment, but rather whatever it takes to pass the time. Now, based on what I've said, you might have the idea I love this game, and you'll be right. But man, 117% this game was a bitch sometimes. Don't get me wrong, I do love this game for everything that I have shown and said, but it's not perfect, and in the end, I do have some personal gripes for this game, since I aim to complete it entirely like the previous two. Sometimes when I travel through a level, I would check every corner possible to complete all challenges to gather all the gems and eggs in said one level, only to be disappointed by looking at the guidebook and see that there are still some missing gems or single egg to be collected, even when the destination just seems like a mess to get to. The most notable level that gave me this problem was the frozen altars, as the gems and egg that I was missing were at the very obvious spot, but you have to complete the entire level in order to get to this runway. Then what you're supposed to do is fly over to the building on the left, climb it, then fly over to the platform where the gems are located. Then you'll have access to fly over to the small platform where the egg is located at. And I wish I could show you this, but Past Burst was too annoyed to record that part. So take the completion of the level as a sign of I did it. Another problem I had didn't happen as much as the previous problem, but it's a big turnoff for me for all games, and that's backtracking. For things I have missed or had to skip because I had to wait to unlock something, or later on finally go back and play what I missed. It only happened a couple times in the game, but it was never to the point to where I had to stop a whole lot of progress just to get a week's worth of chores done. When you have to backtrack in the Year of the Dragon, you at least have the guidebook to tell you where you missed, and you can immediately go to the world through the book, rather than taking the balloon and ships to go through all those loading screens to finally get to your destination. I just find backtracking a drag and a waste of time, as I could just be using it to draw my time with the game and attacking moneybacks for scamming all of my money away. But aside from those cons, I still enjoyed playing this game and was glad that I collected almost everything and beat the sorceress in the finale, who is honestly pretty easy, and the game is complete. But you know that's not true, as if you collect everything prior or after being the sorceress, you'll unlock a special level called the Super Bonus Round. Okay, lame name, but sure. Here we are in a single world full of all the sorcerer's treasures, and it's all for grabs as long as you kill all the thieves inside. Man, I need to get rid of this bloodlust. Once you do all the minigames around and collect all the gems, you have one final fight in the game, and it's the sorcerers again. Okay, sure. Yeah, the game kind of presents here kind of lame, as the entire time we see her in the cutscene, she's the cold-hearted maniacal ruler, and sure, the first fight wasn't that great, but at least the game still built up to it. Here, the game literally states that she's somehow still alive and has to be defeated here, while on a UFO, and somehow they made this easier than the first fight, so yeah, not great at all. But when you finally beat the sorceress, you get the final egg and one last scene, which can only be unlocked through 117% of the game. Oh boy, let's see what it is. Cute. And with that, that was Spyro Year the Dragon, specifically its Reignited Trilogy version. And despite everything that I blabber on and bitched about, how do I still feel about this game? Well, I think I still like it. Sure, there's some nostalgia factor closing in on that gap, and sure, I had to go through the annoyances of some of the speedways, the race segments, and skateboarding. God, I hated those. But in the end, it was just a whole lot of dumb fun. And sometimes with the era full of like these more complicated and fun games, sometimes you just need a simple, fun game to have. And who knows, maybe I'll actually get around to play the other two games. Maybe even get a PlayStation 2 to play these three games in the original platform. But until then, I never want to see another fucking skateboard in my life.